I grew up the oldest, or eldest, I should say, of six. So I was the oldest in two-parent household. My parents have been married now for about 46 years. And we pretty much had the standard upbringing of most people in my neighborhood. I didn't really know we was poor until I saw rich people. Y'all got me? I didn't know what that means. Some of y'all might can identify with that, but you know, we grew up saying, oh, I'm poor. I didn't know we was poor until I saw rich people. I thought everybody lived the way we live. But at a young age, about 7 years old, I decided, I made a decision rather as to what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I started recording music as a child. I put my first album out when I was like 12 in 1989. None of y'all in here was alive back then, right? Because if we got some people in here other than the teachers and staff that was living way back then, you were a lifelong student. So, right, we're going to say about 89, I started taking the music business serious, put an album out, released it, and around 1997, I met a guy who we know as Master P. Master P was from the Calio Project. Y'all familiar with Master P? Anybody in here familiar with him? He's an old dude now, you know, to y'all young people, he's an old dude. But back in the 90s, he had a record label called No Limit, and it was one of the biggest labels at that time in the world. And being signed to him, I got the chance to travel all over the world. I mean, I've been to about 20 different countries. I was opening for Snoop Dogg and a whole list of other people that I can name. But all of that is irrelevant because at some point, doing this touring, moving around, and traveling, going back and forth, something happened that changed my life forever. And we're going to get into that in a minute. All right. This is a criminal justice class, right? If I'm not mistaken. So all of y'all are criminal justice majors? No.
No? Mixture of majors.
Huh?
There's a mixture of majors.
Oh, so there's a mixture of majors.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, for those of you who are not, if you're interested in criminal justice, what I came to talk to you about today is my experience and how it relates to the field that you've chosen or may be interested in going in. Well, on the night of February 21st, 2000, well, February 20th, 2000, I was scheduled to make an appearance at a nightclub where my mother had put together an event to showcase local talent in Slidell, right? Slidell, Louisiana, which is right over the lake. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, somewhere between midnight and 1 in the morning, a fight broke out on the dance floor, resulting in a young man losing his life. Y'all hear that? So as a result of this fight, a 19-year-old young man lost his life. What happened next would alter my life. The decisions I made after hearing a gunshot in this club would eventually change my life forever. And as a result, I spent 21 years in prison for a crime that I didn't commit. As of June 22nd last year, I've been a free man. And I have to be honest with you. I'm still getting adjusted to being out in society because a lot of things have changed in 21 years. Some of y'all who are 21 years old, I'm pretty sure things are very different from when y'all were, say, 5 or 6, right? 7, 8 years old. So can you imagine what life was like for me after being held in confinement so long and then sprung back to the free world after 21 years? I ain't gonna lie to you, I felt like a dinosaur. It's like everything was moving so fast. Technology had advanced. When I left the streets, you flip this out and talk on it. Y'all remember that? Y'all too young to even remember that. The last phone I had, you actually flip it, you talk in it, it's called a Nextel, and you can chirp and send little messages, right? So when I get out and I grab this, I'm like, what is this? This is a computer in my hand. I didn't have access to all that in prison. So my wife and my daughters have basically been helping me learn how to adjust to society, right? Now, I have to be honest with y'all. I'm nervous right now because my daughter's in here. See, my wife, me and her, we done spoke. I don't did these speeches every day. But y'all know I'm nervous from the girls, because they're probably like, yeah, his drip ain't right. You know how y'all, you know how the young people are. So we're going to talk about wrongful convictions and how this happens. So I want to give y'all some facts about wrongful convictions first. They say the National Registry of Exoneration lists more than 2,500 exonerations of innocent defendants that spent more than 22,000 years in prison, including 160 exonerees who served at least 25 years each. Now, how many years did I spend? 21. So according to the national statistics, I think I did just a little bit less than the average, right? Between 2% and 10% of convicted individuals in the U.S. prison population are innocent. I want y'all to really, really digest that number. They say between 2 and 10% of convicted individuals in the U.S. prison population are innocent. 2%, that's horrible. But 10% is inexcusable. I think that it is very inexcusable for an advanced country like ours to have 10% of the people in prison wrongfully convicted. I think that's horrible. In fact, one person that's wrongfully convicted is an atrocity. But we're talking about out of 100 people, if they convict 100 people, 10 of them is innocent, that's not good. Keeping in mind that there are 2.3 million incarcerated individuals in the United States, we can see that the number of innocent people behind bars is anywhere from 46,000 to 230,000. I want y'all to really take in that number. They are saying that possibly 230,000 individuals are in prison for crimes that they didn't commit. How does this happen? This is the question that has been the basis for a lot of laws that are being passed, a lot of bills that are put forth in the legislature every year. Everybody want to know, how does this happen? How can you have a person in prison for a crime they didn't commit? Because I like to believe that our prosecutors and district attorneys, we like to believe that they have the right mindset when they're going into this. We like to believe that. I know I do. I don't want to believe that the people we elected over the criminal justice system is actually moving in a nefarious manner. I don't like to believe that, right? So, according to the National Institute of the main contributing factors for wrongful conviction in the U.S. fall into the following 6 categories: mistaken witness or eyewitness identification. They have that first. So obviously, that is probably the number one. How does that happen? Do anybody?
There's different types. Like there's the photograph lineup, or there's the in-person lineup. And with the photograph lineup, a lot of the times the people who are interrogating you kind of give you a hint of
as to who. Right.
Even with the in-person lineup, they do the same thing with that as well.
And guess what? That is a good point she made, because during the photographic lineup for me, right, what they did was they went on record to say, well, the witness identified him out of 24 people. We normally just do 12, but we did 24 to make sure they were sure. Okay. On the page that I was on, I think it was like about 12 people Most of them were not only black, but most of them were black and dark, and they had me as like the lone light-skinned guy in the middle, and they made sure the picture was in the middle because the eyes is gonna kind of gravitate towards the middle of the page, right? So I'll say this, where I'll get to why I was mistaken. The next thing is false confessions. Are y'all familiar with false confessions? False confessions take place rather when a person is under stress, sometimes under threat. And once again, in my case, a couple of the witnesses came forth later and said that they were coerced and threatened into. Well, no, that's witnesses. That's witnesses. We're talking about confessions. Some people under duress and under threats from detectives, yeah, I did it. Sometimes it be people who have severe mental health problems. You know what I mean? That they kind of push and push and push until they get the answer that they're looking for. Y'all watch First 48, right? Y'all see on First 48 how they do it. All right. False or misleading forensic evidence or its misapplication. Good example. Are y'all familiar with a paraffin test? No one's familiar with a paraffin test? All right, a paraffin test is, I'll put it in layman's terms, because I didn't know paraffin, that's just a fancy word I learned. Paraffin test is a gunpowder residue test. When they test your hands for gunpowder to see if you fired a weapon, right? Well, let me tell you a little secret about it. Normally, they use these tests to convict the person, right? To prove that you fired a weapon. Well, in my case, in the case of Phipps versus State of Louisiana, they did a paraffin test on me that suddenly went missing. And they got their expert to get on the stand and say that paraffin tests are unreliable and we therefore don't use them in Louisiana. They got an expert, a police officer, a so-called expert to get on the stand and say that paraffin tests or gunpowder residue tests are unreliable. I wonder if he considered the thousands of people that were convicted because of a paraffin test when he made that statement. Because if I was in prison for a crime that they used the paraffin test to convict me of, I would have used his statement in that case to get me a body, since they're unreliable and we don't use them, right? Perjury or false accusation informers. What we call informers? What we call them? Huh? Come on now. We ain't lame in here. What do we call informers in the hood? We call them snitches or rats, right? Same thing. You know what I mean? It's tricky when you're dealing with informers. One of the informants in my case, he was facing a cocaine charge. It was held over his head, and they used that to coerce him into getting on the stand and pointing me out. He got on the stand, and he not only pointed me out, he said, and I can remember vaguely, like, that's him. And they were like, are you sure? I'm 100% sure. He said, they said, how do you know he's sure? He said, because he looks me in the eye. So I looked you in the eye after I shot someone. And I didn't shoot you. All right, so once he testified, y'all know what happened to that drug charge, right? They dropped it. Why? So official and government misconduct, like we said earlier, and we'll get into that. A lot of times we have, and I don't think it's a reflection of the majority, but a lot of times we have situations where there's a certain political stance on crime in a certain area, and I believe that this contributes to this ideology that we have to be tough on crime, and no matter what, we have to get these convictions because these convictions get me elected, right? And I'll get back to what actually happened to those politicians that were responsible for that. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Inadequate legal defense. A lot of guys just simply can't afford representation. I'm going to just be honest with you. While I was mentoring in prison, I literally have held young men in my arms who were crying because they had been given so many years, right? And one young man in particular who I always remember, he had started taking hits at 14 years old. He was being paid, his first time he was paid $1,500 to shoot someone. And I explained to him, I said, young man, he was crying when he told me about it. You can't even talk to a lawyer for a murder charge with $1,500. I promise you, because mine cost me $40. You can't even talk to a lawyer with $1,500. So a lot of times, they get free defense attorneys or pro bono, what we call it, public defenders. And a lot of times the public defenders be overworked, understaffed, and I mean they just can't, they don't have the resources to spend the time to give that kind of attention to your case. And that's another thing that contributes to it. Go to the next one. All right, so wait, how a wrongful conviction happened to me. All right, so I kind of jumped ahead of that, but I'm gonna go back to it. I want to take y'all to this night. I want y'all to imagine it was dark. We're talking about a nightclub. I'm pretty sure y'all familiar with nightclubs, right? So it was dark. The music was loud. It was smoking in the air. So I want y'all to consider all of these things. It was smoking. It was loud. It was dark. It was crowded. A fight broke out. In the midst of the tussle, I heard what appeared or sounded vaguely to me like a gunshot. I couldn't determine at that second if it was a gunshot or if it was part of the music that was playing, right? Because people have gunshots in their song. So what let me know that it had to be something, because I saw people running. And when I saw people start to scatter, my reaction, my natural reaction was I grabbed my gun out of my pocket, kneeled down, grabbed the young lady who was standing next to me, who was asking me for an autograph. I grabbed her, pulled her to the ground, and told her, don't move, don't run, because we don't know where the shots are coming from. And I don't want you to go run into a bullet, right? So when I grabbed her and we got on the ground, now my mind is thinking of where's my mother. My mother was at the door collecting the admission fee. Keep in mind, I had no idea at that moment who was shooting, or in fact, if I was the target. I had no idea. I saw a tussle, and I heard a shot come from what appeared to me that way. So my first reaction was, I gotta get to mom. That's anybody's natural reaction, right? I gotta find mom. I gotta make sure mom's okay. So what I did was, after pulling her down, pulled the gun out of my waist, I headed towards the front door, looking for my mom. Two of my friends kind of grabbed me and shielded me, and we headed toward the front door. I didn't want to bump into anyone and have the gun go off. So what I did was, I held the gun over my head, and I kind of scooted through the crowd like this here. Right? So now we're going to talk about misidentification. Y'all got that? Y'all heard all of that, right? How do y'all think, or why do you think the police came to my house to arrest me?
Because people saw you with a gun.
People saw me with a gun, right? What else?
You popular?
Oh, popular? That played a part in it. My poster was on the wall. So when the police came, they were like, what happened? Remember, it was dark, it was smoky, it was loud, it was crowded. And this tall, skinny red dude was running through the crowd with a gun in his hand. So when the detectives came on the scene, and they were asking the first people they could ask, what happened? It was Magnum. Well, let me tell you something about Nim. Nim ain't got a name or a face, right? But Mac's face is on that poster. So, who is this guy on the poster? The promoter said, that's Mac. I've been to his house before, let me bring it in. All of this took place without my knowledge. So, they were on their way to my house. I lived 45 minutes away in Baton Rouge at the time, right? So they get to my house, and they pretty much arrested me because they had witnesses that told them. And I don't fault the witnesses. Why? Because in a way, without fully knowing, they were just going off of what they believed because they saw me running through the crowd with a gun in my hand, right? So they just reacted when asked these questions. And in fact, the detective's words in trial was, many people on the scene believed Mac did it, right? He actually used this language in court. He said many of the people believed Mac did it because if you consider everything I just said to y'all, it certainly appears that way, right? So, official and government misconduct, misleading forensic evidence. You got the witnesses. They said one thing, but now you got this young man in custody. So now it's time, now that you have him in custody, now it's time to make this case. Here's where the misconduct of officials come in play, to me. You've been a detective for 20 years. You can't tell me that during that first 48 or the first couple hours of my arrest, something wasn't adding up, right? You had no weapon. You had witnesses giving conflicting statements because some people, other than the people that said they believed Mac did it, other people were saying it wasn't Mac, it was a dark-skinned guy who looked like blah, blah, blah. Well, I believe that Mac was a convenient choice, and because he was convenient, he also became the prime target because of the popularity. Because now I can move up in ranks if I catch this big fish. Y'all know how it goes. Everybody want to get to the top of their field. And for some of these detectives, I believe that that was the motivation behind pushing this case. In normal situations, you investigate and then you arrest, right? Right? In my case, they arrested, then they investigated. And they tried to make everything that they had point towards this guy, right? Which is me. So, was it misconduct? I believe when they arrested me, when they came to get me, I believe they had good intentions. I believe they thought that they was doing the right thing. But once they had me and they discovered I wasn't the right person, that's where the misconduct came in. Because now we can't look like a fool. This case is on the national, we're tough on crime at the same time. Because these politicians are on our back. Make sure this conviction rate that is 93% at the time stay 93%. Right? We got to make sure of that. So that's where I believe the misconduct came into play. I'm going to share with y'all after I give y'all this last part. We talked about misleading forensic evidence. Remember what I told you about the gunpowder residue? It wasn't used. Now, misconduct by government officials. Has anyone in here read anything about my case? Y'all didn't do your research? Oh, all right. So, it's in a book called Rap on Trial. The district attorney who was over my case is now a convicted felon. He just got out of prison because of COVID a couple months ago. He was convicted of shaking the hospitals down, wiretaps, fraud. He was getting money from everyone. This is who was in charge of this parish. These are the people that we elect to set the standards for justice. Right? The sheriff, I'm ready, I have saved them for last. The sheriff who spearheaded the investigation which led to my eventual conviction, is now a convicted felon with 4 life sentences for child rape, pornography, incest, I'm going to say it again, incest, aggravated rape, molestation, pornography, and the list goes on and on. He was given 4 life sentences. His name is Jack Strain. He was in the news a few months ago. The district attorney who was convicted, his name is Walter Reese. Yes. These are the people that we elect as a community. Sheriff Jack Strain. Strain like strain. S-T-R-A-I. 9 unanimous juries. Is anyone familiar with the new law that they recently passed outlawing convictions without a unanimous jury?
Yeah, they did that.
You're familiar with it? So let's talk about 9 unanimous juries. In 1898, delegates in Louisiana convened the state constitutional convention with a very specific goal, written in the official journal of the proceedings, to reestablish the supremacy of the white race. This is not something I'm making up. This is not something in some conspiracy theorist's book. This was the language of the 1898 Delegates Convention. They said the proceedings were to reestablish the supremacy of the white race. That same year, black men had recently been given the rights of citizenship, the right to vote, the right to hold public office, and the right to be judged by a jury of their peers, including their black peers. In addition, implementing poll taxes and literacy tests for voting, the convention also made a specific change to the way criminal trials were conducted in the state, allowing for a split jury verdicts in felony trials where the defendant could be convicted with 9 of 12 jurors. A later convention in 1974 changed the law to require 10 jurors to agree. Now, y'all got that? In an effort to maintain the supremacy of whites, what happened was, now that you've given these black men the right to vote, the right to be tried by a jury of their peers, and the right to citizenship, now we had to have something in the bag to make sure they can't get too far out of line. So now if they get convicted of a crime, we want to make sure that they don't need 12 people to convict them. We want to make sure that all it takes is 10. And we'll never let more than 2 people on the jury. We'll never let more than 2 blacks on the jury, right? And all it would take is 10 to convict. Well, at that time it was 9. They'd never let more than 3. And it worked both ways. Because if a white man is on trial, right, and the 3 black jurors say he's guilty, the 9 will set him free. To make sure. This was in the language of these conventions at that time. Please. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 1974 that 9 unanimous juries are a violation of the 6th Amendment. Yet 2 states, Oregon and Louisiana, found a loophole. To this day, I think Oregon is the only one left that lets you convict without a 9 unanimous jury for a felony conviction, particularly capital offenses. In my case, it was 10 to 2. 10 people said convict him, 2 people said no. When I was sitting there listening and waiting for the verdict to come from the jury's deliberation, I heard 2 women hollering and screaming. They were yelling and screaming. All I can make out was the words, "This is ridiculous." That's all I can make out. They were yelling and screaming. And I like to believe that those were the 2 women, because it was 2 people that said no. My jury was 10 to 2. I think those were the 2 women that was like, nah, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense. Y'all don't have any evidence to convict this young man. My jury was all white. I did not have a single black person, no other kind of person. Predominantly over 40. So this was an all-white jury of people predominantly over 40. You're supposed to have a jury of peers, right? I was 22 years old. You see what I'm saying?
So in other words, like these people don't know the setting of a club, dark,
totally
smoky.
Disconnected. They totally disconnected. This was during the jury, during the voir dire hearing where you pick jurors, right? They only had one black person to choose from in the whole 36-member jury pool. And they asked her one question. They said, "Are you familiar with Master P and his record label?" She said, "I mean, like anybody else. I hear his music on the radio. They got her out. Don't want you on the jury." Right? White. There was a professor, white guy, tall white guy. He was a professor. I will never forget it. He was reading the book. They asked him, "Do you have a problem convicting someone of a crime that carries life in prison?" The professor said, and this was a tall white guy, he said, "For me to convict someone of a crime, for them to do life in prison, you have to really have some outstanding evidence and really convince me beyond the shadow of a doubt. Get him out of here. Don't want him in there. He's thinking too much. We don't want him to think. We want those people who are going to say the police is just doing a great job. Just think they're doing a great job, and if he's here and they've arrested him, well, goddamn hell, he must have done something." Yes, sir.
At the beginning of your story, when you heard the shot, you were next to a woman, and you told her to kneel down and stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
Did she testify? You know, that's me.
Yes,
right there.
yes. Yes, she did.
Yeah.
She was painted by the DA as a compulsive liar. They said that, well, back in 19 such and such she did this. They made sure they covered all that. They used that and threats. Yes, sir.
Then my overall question is, what was the motive?
Exactly. What the motive for?
What was the motive for you to kill somebody? What was the motive?
All right. Here's I'm gonna give you, and we were gonna get into that. I was gonna give you what they believed happened and how it happened. Because I just told y'all what was the facts from my point of view, and then I'm going to tell you what I later learned happened, and as opposed to what they said happened. She had a question too.
My question was, after you had been set free and they figured out all this was criticizing all that bullshit, what happened to those who actually completed, other than the two that you mentioned? Like, did the entire sheriff department, the police department, did they get penalized as well, or did just these two people?
Oh, good question. Those people that got penalized had nothing to do with my case. Nothing. They got convicted of other crimes. Like one of them got convicted of wiretap fraud and all of that. The other one is convicted of incest, child molestation, rape. He was raping his own nieces, cousins, everybody. He was getting it in. There was a young boy that was grown. He's a grown man now, but he was one of the inmates at his work release who testified that the reason he was getting out of trouble all his life because the sheriff had been raping him since he was a little boy. Now, here's the deal. I didn't get exonerated.
You didn't?
No. I made parole after being granted clemency by the government. And we're going to get into clemency before I go. But we have a question. I was going to get to that. You're jumping. Hold on, you're jumping. All right, so I'm going to take one more before I get it.
So you were sentenced to the death penalty?
No, I was
you
convicted
just
of manslaughter.
Okay.
Life and second-degree murder in Louisiana is what I was charged with. Second-degree murder in this state carries a life sentence without parole. No parole. I was convicted, however, of manslaughter. The jury, who I told y'all, even though they went with the conviction, they did not convict me of the harshest crime because I think somewhere in the back of their psyche, they knew that this wasn't right. So I think that they came with a verdict that was going to satisfy all parties. We're going to give this family their quote-unquote justice, and we're going to allow this man an opportunity to leave, to see the streets again. Even though I would be owed this with all these gray hairs. But that's what I think they've done. We was at, according to 2020 Supreme Court ruling, 9 unanimous jury convictions are no longer constitutional in the state of Louisiana. Last year, the court decided that the decision had to automatically apply retroactively to old cases. Did y'all hear that last part? I'm going to slow that down. Last year, the court decided that the decision does not automatically apply retroactively to old cases. Let me tell y'all how screwed up that is. Remember the language of that 1898 convention, right? When they instituted that law, it was for that purpose, to maintain white supremacy. So they knew that they were doing wrong and injustice to the people they were convicting. However, when they changed this law, they did not want it to affect the people that they hadn't already messed over. They said from this day forward, nobody can be convicted of a non-unanimous jury. But screw all of the people that's still sitting in prison with non-unanimous juries. We're not going to retroact, it's not going to apply to them. Because one of our Supreme Court justices, Justice Kavanaugh, said that it would be too much of a burden on the states. They don't have the resources. It would take up too much time and resources to go relook at all those cases. But you didn't consider that when you was convicting all the people. That took up time and resources as well, right? But this is the outlook. The lack of retroactivity leaves over 1,500 individuals still in prison on non-unanimous verdicts. That's just in the state of Louisiana. I know for a fact because I just left those guys, and I know some guys right now, many of them that were convicted with a non-unanimous jury. Corey Miller, one of my closest friends who we call C. Murder, is one of them. His verdict was 10-2 as well, and countless others. Some of them is, one of my friends, he was convicted of an 11-1. He's waiting to get some type of plea. All of them are trying to file to see if they can get this law retroactive. Every year, a bill goes into, or proposal, goes into the session to try and change that. Because you've admitted that the basis for this was because of things of the past. You've admitted that, but you don't want it to affect those who were affected in the past. And I think that's horrible. And that's why we're speaking to the criminal justice today. Because many of you guys are going to be our lawyers, our district attorneys. Don't be like that one. And I mean that. Don't be like that one. Lyrics on trial. All right. Over the last few decades, as rap became increasingly popular, prosecutors saw an opportunity. They could present the sometimes violent, crime-laden lyrics of amateur rappers as confessions to crime, threats, or violence, evidence of gang affiliation, or revelations of criminal motive, and judges and jurors would go along with it. All right. So here we go. What if I don't like rap? What if I just hate it? And I'm totally removed from that experience. And I'm sitting on the jury. I already think rap is garbage. I already got a dislike for certain people. And now, one of these rap guys come before me, and he's on trial. Sometimes I believe that we already have a preconceived outlook or perspective on a person, right? The prosecuting attorney in my case walked past me and my lawyer with a folder, and he said, "I'm waiting on you to put him on the stand. I got both of his albums right here." Right? Now, I don't know if y'all know about hip-hop. Y'all probably never even heard of hip-hop. Y'all don't even know what that is. But I will say this. There is something called hip-hop where a lot of young men make songs and they talk about their fantasies. They talk about the things that they just fantasize, a lot of it. But what they do sometimes is they propagate it as facts. Now, I'm here to tell y'all as a rapper, 80 to 95% of what these young men are saying is totally garbage. And what I mean by garbage is it's not true. Huh? Because it sells. She's asked a good question. She said, why write it? Because there are some demographics of society, I don't know if it's demographics or just not demographic. There is a certain percentage of our population that just loves drama. We crave violence. So these young men then realize, if I write it like this, people won't be in the car, oh, that's my. He's talking about his ops, he killed 75 people in one verse. He's not a killer, the boy's just a rapper. But he knows what sells. So I don't really blame the rappers as much as I blame the audience. Because any person in any business is only going to sell what is selling. Right? Now, I do believe that there are special instances where if you commit a crime tonight, then you get on the record. Like recently, I ain't gonna say no names, in somebody's case, one little boy killed someone who was famous and then said something on his social page or made a song about it. Of course, if you're going to do that, then detectives are going to listen. I mean, that's just the way it is. They're going to pay attention. If you are a suspect in a crime, yes, they're going to go back and say, well, he described exactly what happened in this instance. But that is very few and far in between. That's rare. I'm here to tell you, as a rapper, that most of what these young men are saying is not facts. This is not true to their life experience. They're telling their fantasies. That's why they name themselves after Scarface, Gotti, after all of these people. Because these are fantasies, right? There's a rock band called The Killers. Are they ever accused of killing? Are they ever scrutinized for the lyrics in their song? No. In my case, my lawyer actually told the jury, Arnold Schwarzenegger plays the Terminator. It doesn't mean he's walking around terminating people. One of my monikers in the song was the Camouflage Assassin. So, boy, that was so convenient for the district attorney. He kept on using that word, the Camouflage Assassin. The Camouflage Assassin. In fact, in his closing statement, he said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want y'all to help me remove the camouflage from this assassin. Ooh, and I tell you, he did that so far, he almost had me convinced I did.
Lawyers are active.
I wanted to stop in the trial and hire him. He was a beast. The prosecutor was a beast. But all jokes aside, the reason I say he was a beast is because he did the unthinkable. He was able to convict the man not only of a crime he didn't commit without any evidence. None. He had no forensic evidence, nothing to tie me to this crime, other than he tried to use my song lyrics to paint me as a bad character. All he had to do in his mind was give the jury the indication that it was a possibility that I could have committed this crime. That was enough for him. As long as he can make them think that it was a possibility, then that was good enough for him. Detectives are reopen cold cases on counter rap lyrics and videos alone. Prosecutors with real conviction by presenting such lyrics and videos of rappers as non-biased. Now, and a long number of aspiring rappers are in prison. I think that's unfair because hip hop, like anything else, is entertainment. I mean, we can look at the TV station and see Empire, Power, Yellowstone, Ozark. We can go, the list goes on and on. There is a percentage of the population that loves drama and violence. That's why reality shows are so popular. That's why hip hop music that talks about certain things is so popular. Because some people just like, that's what we crave. Unfortunately, there is a percentage of the population that craves it. No other form of creative expression is treated this way in culture. Remember I told you about the rock and roll? The practice continues despite research and appeals for finding that rap music can be prejudicial when presented before a judge or jury without context. And let me say this. I'm all for freedom of speech. I believe in freedom of speech. But I want you, as young people, to be aware that just because you have freedom of speech does not mean that your speech can't be used against you. Because the truth of the matter is, you have to be careful about how you want to be presented to people. So something like this doesn't happen in your life. Make sense? When I look back at personal accountability, yes, there were some things that, while convicted of a crime I didn't commit, there were certainly some things I wish I had said. There were certainly some things I wish I hadn't done leading up to this, right? But all of those things are in hindsight. Prosecutors used my image against me, and they spliced the lyrics of 2 songs together. I had a song called Murder, Murder, Kill, Kill. Yeah, I was the dummy that made the song. The dummy on trial, who actually had a song called Murder, Murder, Kill, Kill. Now here's the funny thing about these songs. I remember watching a movie where there was a military cadence. It was like the military was marching. And y'all familiar with military cadences? It was whatever, how they be marching. Well, I basically took a military cadence and turned it into a kill, 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 right? They took that, presented that in court to the jury as evidence that I was a killer. And they took 2 different songs, spliced them together to make it sound like one statement, and painted that to the jury. When my lawyer objected, what the DA said was, look, I'm not using it. He was very slick. Remember I said he was good. He said, this is not actual evidence. I'm using this to show his character, right? Because all he had was my character. I have never been in any kind of trouble as a juvenile or an adult. I never even had anything other than a traffic ticket. So he was faced with the task of convicting someone. And trust me, it has not dawned on them yet, the enormity of what they have done. I feel sorry for them. I empathize, not feel sorry, I empathize with them and their parents. Because they don't realize what they done got themselves into. This lady lost her life. I feel sorry for that lady's family, right? This should not happen. These were kids, 15 and 16 years old. And these are the kind of people that I'm trying to get to before that happens. That's why I'm in here talking to y'all. Hope none of y'all ain't had nothing like that on y'all mind. Because if y'all do, y'all can call me. Y'all hit me up on Instagram. Just hit me up. Matt, look, I need to talk to you. My mind is wandering. I want to go do something crazy. Hit me up. Because I really don't want to see y'all end up in that place. I stand here before y'all with a smile on my face. Yes, I'm happy to be free. But let me tell you something. I just walked through the valley of the shadow of death for real. Like, this is not a game. Movies can't prepare you for it. The TV shows y'all watch can't prepare you for it. This is mental and emotional torture that I walk through. Trust me. And if I appear in any way to minimize it or desensitize it, I'm lying. Because what it was, I can't even describe. I've seen people get stabbed multiple times in front of me. I've seen people get beaten to death. And those are just one issue with prison. What I've seen most that I found most troubling is isolation from loved ones and family. When people don't have that family support in prison, I watch it break them. Thankfully, I had family support. Because I'm telling you, I've seen people go literally without being connected to their family slowly but surely over the course of time. I've seen them lose it. I have a friend of mine who was a street dude. He's in there now, he's still there. He committed some serious crimes and he couldn't handle it. And I watched him slowly go from that dude that was bopping up the wall to just staring. Now he just walks around the prison like this. he gone. If you go talk to him, he's not even looking at you, he's looking through you. Because some people are not strong enough to handle it on their own. And it's not a good place. So with that being said, that's pretty much who I am. And I want to know if y'all had any questions for me before I go. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever try to get in touch with organizations like the Innocent Project or any other people who would help you get exonerated before you were granted clemency?
I tried everything. And I tell you, everybody, a close friend of mine actually worked for the Innocent Project at the time that I was trying to get them to take my case. And what they said to her was that because I didn't have a life sentence, the Innocent Project couldn't do nothing for me. So I literally didn't have enough time for the Innocent Project to work on my case.
Okay, so what was your initial reaction upon the arresting, and then what was your initial reaction upon the conviction, and then what kept you up for 21 years, knowing that you didn't,
The hope that I'll be free. They can say what they want. Hope is a great thing. The hope that tomorrow gonna be the day I'll be free. I didn't think one day in there, I always thought that tomorrow gonna be that day. The next day gonna be that day. It's gonna happen next month. It's gonna happen next week. That's what kept me going. Because if I would have ever just accepted that, okay, this is my life and this is what it's gonna be for 30 years, because I was sentenced to 30 years. If I would have accepted that this is gonna be my life for 30 years, I don't know if I would have been the same individual. You know what I mean? I probably would have been a monster. Who knows? But to answer your other question, how did I react? When I first got arrested, I was naive enough to think that the system worked properly. So I thought that, okay, I'm arrested, they're gonna find out what's happening, and they're gonna let me go, right? I naively think that this is the way the system works and it's gonna work properly. It didn't. And it kind of makes you question your faith in everything. Because it's like, yo, how did this happen to me? You know, I went through all of the phases you can possibly think of that a person went through. I went through them early on in my incarceration. And at some point I realized, you know what? The only way I'm gonna get myself out of here is to emotionally remove myself from this situation. So in an effort to be free, I had to basically look at myself like I was my own client, right? And I have to work to get this client up out of this place. Because reading my transcripts used to irritate me. To this day, my wife and I was going over something about a week or two ago, and she was like, I want you to look at this in the case. And I said, I don't want to look at the transcript. They just brought me pain for a lot of years. It just brought me agony. And I don't like being mad. I'm not a person who, some people operate well in pain and anguish. I don't like it. So I basically had to detach myself emotionally and say, okay, this is what I got to do, X, Y, and Z, to get out of here. And I figured out early on that money wasn't going to get me out. Because if money could get me out, I'd been out of prison. Because I have a lot of friends that got a lot of money. I didn't see everything that happened. What I later learned was, when the fight broke out, he was the backdoor bouncer. He ran toward the fight to see what was going on, according to his confession. He said when he ran over there, the young man who died, according to him, charged him with a bottle because he thought that he was coming to get in the fight. He shot him one time in the arm. And he confessed to it. So what they did was charged him with accessory after the fact, held it over his head, and threatened him not to come to court and testify in my trial. Y'all got it? Held it over his head, threatened him to not come to court, and when he did, suddenly his charges were dropped. So he confessed twice. In court, he did it at the sheriff's office, and then a couple years later, or a couple of months later rather, he got a private investigator and he confessed again. When I was going to trial, he was my aunt's boyfriend. When I was going to trial, they went to my aunt's house. The detectives went to his house and threatened him and told him, "You better not bring your to court." They told my daddy, "We got who we want." That was that. And I say that, but y'all know one thing. If I'm standing here before y'all as a free man, that's over with. Right? I done did the time for it. So for me to lie about it at this point wouldn't benefit me in no way. This man confessed to it, told him he did it, went, showed him why, they let him go. They said, "You think you're lying, he pays you." So in court, I was like, what can I possibly pay someone to go through life in prison? That doesn't even make any sense. We're not talking about that's my weed, that was mine. Or that's my dope. You're talking about a life sentence. No, he confessed because he felt bad. He felt guilty because he hadn't done that, and he realized that someone that he considered family was sitting in that place for something he done, and it was eating at him. And he did what a person is supposed to do, and that's take responsibility for your actions. That's what real people are supposed to do. There were cameras